Do you believe, as the Attorney General of the United States, that mail-in voting will lead to massive voter fraud?
I think there's a high risk that it will.
Do you ever vote by mail-in ballot?
Apparently I did once at least.
But you believe that other people voting by mail could lead to massive fraud?
No, what I've talked about, made very clear, is that I'm not talking about accommodations to people who have to be out of the state or have some particular need not to, inability to go and vote. What I'm talking about is the wholesale conversion of election to mail-in voting.
You do understand that African Americans disproportionately do not survive COVID-19 coronavirus. You are aware of that?
I didn't hear the question.
You are aware that African Americans, black people, disproportionately die from COVID-19 coronavirus, correct?
Yes, I think that's right.
And not that it would be the first time that African Americans would risk their lives to vote in this country to preserve its democracy. But the suggestion is that them having the ability to vote by mail would somehow lead to massive voter fraud. But I won't stick to that.
No, I didn't say that. I just state, I think, what is a reality, which is that if you have wholesale mail-in voting, it substantially increases the risk of fraud.
But it doesn't make it likely.
That's all I said.
Do you believe that an election conducted mainly by mail can be secure?
Personally, no. I'm talking about a comprehensive rule where all the ballots are essentially mail-in, and there's so many occasions for fraud there that cannot be policed. I think it would be very bad. But one of the things I mentioned was the possibility of counterfeiting.
Did you have evidence to raise that specific concern?
No, it's obvious.
NBCNews.com political reporter Jane Tim joins me now, our friendly fact checker. And Jane, Barr went on to suggest that things can happen with mail-in ballots because, quote, people move all the time and you can easily take things out of mailboxes. Is there any evidence to suggest that ballots are being stolen out of mailboxes?
You know, this is a little bit of fear mongering here. There's no evidence of widespread fraud. And that's the most important thing to point to. While, yes, people have occasionally stolen things out of mailboxes or ballots might get lost in the mail, it doesn't mean those ballots are going to go into other elections and be counted. It doesn't mean that people can pick up a ballot, fill in some bubbles and then cast that ballot. It means that maybe ballots do get lost in the mail. I mean, just saying that it's physically possible does not mean it actually happens. There are states that run their elections completely by mail. I think it's 5 states, about west of Colorado, 70% of ballots are cast by mail. We have not questioned the integrity of those elections up till now. First off, absentee ballots tend to be pretty secure. They're printed on special stock paper. They have barcodes that are traceable. There's a lot of mechanisms that are in place to make sure that the people who are supposed to vote are the ones voting on their absentee ballots. Things like signature matches, making sure that you sign it the way you signed your voter registration form. The idea that foreign countries could print off 1 million ballots and file them for one candidate, like Trump suggested, is really, really far-fetched. I talked to election experts about this, and they said this isn't like an easy counterfeit. You know, you need to have the exact right paper so that it doesn't jam up the machines. You need to have accurate voter information, sometimes the last 4 digits of people's driver's license. You'd have to have a whole lot of information. And as we've learned in previous elections, there are easier ways to disrupt an election. And what experts tell me is that if people do this, they get caught. It would show up. We've seen sort of small cases of fraud where you do see something that didn't make sense, like a dead person casting a ballot. Those do get caught from time to time. That's the kind of occasional fraud you get with absentee ballots, but it's incredibly rare, and it's, hundreds out of millions of ballots that we're talking about. But one thing that's really important about absentee ballots, they're on paper. You want to check it? You can.
Jane, the president tweeted earlier this week that Americans voted through 2 world wars, suggesting that the coronavirus should not keep people from voting in person either. But interestingly enough, mail-in voting actually goes back to the Civil War. Could you tell some of the history here?
For election wonks like myself, that tweet was ironic because wars are actually where you see absentee ballots working really well. The armed services have been voting through those two world wars, and we developed absentee ballots so that Union soldiers could vote in 1865, so that you could vote for your candidate while you were fighting for our freedom. So this is where you see a really functional absentee ballot system through the military, millions of ballots every year, and the president sort of tweet was not really in checking with the actual election history.